Welcome to the Jeff Knows Inc. Entrepreneurial Show with your host, Jeff Lopes.
Welcome to episode 170 of the Jeff Knows Inc. podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Lopes. Super excited to have on today Jay, the Prehistoric Pets Brewer. What a fun conversation, everyone. Sit back and enjoy. We are live on the Jeff Knows Inc. podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Lopes. Look at this smile. Super excited to have on Jay Brewer. What is up, brother?
Just hanging out, getting ready to go to work today. Kind of had a relaxed Monday morning.
Till I called and saw you get you on the podcast. I've been trying to get Jay on for a couple of weeks now, and for our season 8.
It's been a crazy couple of weeks, just to let you know.
It's
in that
been awesome.
couple of weeks, I was out of the state, and then I went to Snoop Dogg's pre-Super Bowl party, and that was kind of cool. Hung out with a bunch of cool people, then ended up doing a party for a company that we're launching, and then ended up coming back for Snoop Dogg's son Cordell's birthday party because he was pretty excited about having the animals over, but I've known him for a while.
So when you're bringing the animals, quick question. So you have your own animals that you travel with to bring to events and stuff?
So if you ever follow me, I'm all over the place.
Oh, I know that. Yeah, of course.
You did mention, I go all over the world, and then I also get a chance to go all over the United States. I have a lot of amazing friends that have amazing animals. But that being said, I have my own little place called the Reptile Zoo in California. And we have all kinds of, we have a kind of a joke. If it hops, crawls, or gives your mom the chills, we have it at the Reptile Zoo.
I love it.
Reptile Zoo, literally. So we don't have the lions and tigers you see me with, or the, bears or any of the crazy, crazy big, large animals, because we're limited to a space here where we're at. And, maybe someday I'll get outside of that. But at this point, I got giant lizards, alligators, but the giant crocodiles are another friend called in Australia. His name's Matt Wright. He has a TV show and all kinds of stuff. So I'm all over the place and I have a good time doing it.
I love it.
So when it's locally in California, I a lot of times take some of my own animals. I only take my own animals.
Yeah.
And I'll go hang out with friends and, do videos or whatever.
I love it. Let's bring it back quite a few years. Jay, when was your first interaction with reptiles? Or what got you hooked? What got you in love with this? And what age did it all start?
Well, actually, when I was a real little kid, I kind of, first of all, we'll start from the beginning. I was actually adopted. And then when my adopted mom and dad were older, but they were wealthy, apparently. But
apparently?
Well, they were wealthy, apparently, because it was hard for somebody that age to get adoption.
Yeah.
And it all looked great. But then just after they got me a year or two later, apparently the bankruptcy, all kinds of problems. So I never seen the money end of it. I saw the tough part. My mom actually passed away when I was 4 years old.
Oh, wow.
She had to go back to work. She was a nurse. And that left me with a single dad. And that was kind of rough because we were pretty poor. But which led me to basically, amazingly enough, that's how I ended up here. So I was very typical young kid, wanted to do a million things, but we couldn't afford bicycles and all the fun stuff of life. So I found these things called lizards and frogs and all the different things in the wild that I could, back then, Orange County actually had land. Yeah. There was orange groves and fields and boards on where you could flip up and find lizards and snakes. And there's still irrigation ditches. I wasn't even then they were illegal to go into, but I would go in the middle of the night and climb fences, and my dad would let me go down there and chase frogs all night. And then what would end up happening, I wouldn't want to go to school. I sucked at school anyway. And so, it's kind of funny, but it's just kind of like how I ended up falling in love with animals in general. They were my go-to thing. Everybody had the dog that they cried on when they were a little kid, right? Yeah. When they didn't understand mom or dad. Well, I had lizards and frogs and I traded them. I went to the pet store back then. There was really no rules. So I'd catch frogs and lizards and take them in, and they would give me some frog or lizard from another country, and And when I ended up completely getting orphaned at 14. My dad drank himself to death, and it's a long story, but it it's a tragedy, but sometimes I look back now and I just think I'm happy. I wouldn't want to change anything, because I kind of became who I was and who I am, and my ability to not give up, because I wouldn't be even here where I was if I had an easy childhood, just because I don't think I would have been able to learn how to persevere through the tough things in life.
We were just talking about that the other day. I was talking to somebody. So I apologize for cutting off. I was talking to somebody on a podcast, and it's an incredible artist. And he was actually, and the more I listened to him, the more I realized that his childhood, those tough moments, were the only reason that brought his inspiration, his artistic ability really to another level. So it's crazy you're saying that, which is, you hear a lot of artists, a lot of people at a high level, that trigger point or something in their beginning really kind of drove them into getting to where they are. So I love that.
I went to a juvenile hall and I told them, I hope one day that this moment, you here in juvenile hall, will be like my worst times in my life that I look back towards as what made me who I am today. I said, don't waste this tough time. And I'm sure, I remember somebody telling me something like that, thinking, this guy's on drugs. But you know what? He was 100% right.
Yeah.
And the toughest parts of your life can be your pinnacles of where you actually receive the understanding how to get through things that get you to places you could never get. It's like the missing code. I'm so bad with people's names, but who's the most famous motivational speaker?
Tony Robbins.
Tony Robbins. And he was saying, he said, weak people make tough times. Tough people make good times. You know what I mean? Because,
it's funny that meme is being used a lot now, because we're from Canada. Our prime minister, a lot of people are using that saying for him right now, which I love.
Well, it's true, because you don't really tap into much when you're just cruising down life.
Yeah.
But when you're like, it's, pardon the term, heaven or hell, what I mean? You just have a way of finding strength that you don't even know you had, and it takes you to levels you never thought you could see, and to be able to do things you never thought you could dream. And that's where I get the term living the dream.
I love it. I love it.
I literally just got, one of the reasons why I was a couple minutes late for this, from what I said, I got on the phone with a very pronounced person in Saudi Arabia about a zoo. And, I go to Saudi Arabia and I get to sit with princes. I go to Dubai and from being an orphan with literally hardly a house to live in, to go to the extremes of going where a billionaire can't sit because they don't, because there's no reason, unless they're friends or know each other. There's no, you can't just buy your way into where I get to go. And I just think to myself, if that ain't living the dream, I don't know what is. I get to meet people. People come from all over the world to visit me. I get to meet awesome people, and all that is from a childhood that looked like owning a bicycle to go to a friend's house was unrealistic. You know what I mean? So it's crazy.
One thing I every time I see any of your videos, and I'm sure everybody feels the exact same way, is your joy for life, that smile you have in your face, that excitement. It's like you're a little kid every time you have one of those videos. It's that excitement. I love that.
Are you ready to unlock your full potential? I want to introduce you to the Fit, Healthy, and Happy podcast, a powerful resource to transform your life today. With expert interviews, practical tips, and inspiring stories, this podcast is your roadmap to lasting wellness. Here's what a listener has to say.
I used to struggle with my health, but this podcast changed everything. It's like having a personal trainer, nutritionist, and life coach totally for free.
With over 2,000 five-star reviews, we're a podcast you can trust. The Fit, Healthy, and Happy podcast, available now wherever you get your podcasts.
I always tell everybody I'm 5 going on 8, but hope to never make it there.
I love it. I love it. I love it.
You know what? When you're young, somebody says something mean to you, you don't even know what they said. It didn't mean nothing.
It didn't mean nothing.
Get older, you start carrying around what somebody said for no reason. You shouldn't care what they said. You should just look in the mirror and I always tell everybody, hey, if somebody says something bad about you 2 or 3 times and they're close to you, you better listen, but people can be mean, and you can hold you back a lot in your life if you don't learn how to just like be a kid and just kind of wake up the next day, forgot what happened, and make the best day out of the today.
Yeah. And that's something I actually preach all the time, but it's something exactly you're saying. It's with life, with just, it's hard. It's hard sometimes. It's hard to just let it roll, right? Because people have so much process of worrying about what other people think of them, and they only realize till the minute they realize that they can control that. They're the only ones that can control that. You're the one allowing that to happen to you. So the minute you realize you're the in control, things change, but you have to come to that realization that you're the one that's in control, right?
I always like this one little simple statement to put people in the train of thought.
Yeah.
When you say to somebody, you make me mad, you're making me mad, you piss me off. Well, can you give anybody more power?
Yeah.
I mean, you're verbally telling them you're in control of me.
Yeah. I love that.
That's just not
real.
It's
simple. Yeah. Simple is true.
Really,
no, it's true. Yeah. It's so simple.
Real. Yeah. You are allowing yourself to be controlled by somebody else. And I just think, I'm not, what? The good news is a lot of people that criticize you are friends, and they really have their best intentions. And some of their criticism, you better listen to.
Yeah.
But you have to learn how to divide it and then move on. Divide it and move on.
Yeah.
Because you need to use what you can, get good out of it, and make sure that nothing they give you is holding you back. Because anything they're holding you back, I don't care how good their intentions are, is no good.
Of course.
So
So take J14. So your father passed away. Where were the next few years of your life?
The way I made it to the next level was I had a hobby that I'd picked up like between 12 and 14, and it was fishing.
Okay.
And it was probably my most passionate thing, because now I was around a bunch of people, which I didn't get that a lot when I was younger, because I was kind of more isolated. I mean, it's like Christmas morning, everybody's opening their gifts. You sit at home all day because you can't go to their family thing. And so it's kind of more of an isolation life.
Yeah.
At 14, I became a fisher, started fishing on the pier. I was part of a big group of fishing people, and it felt like family, the family I never really had, having just basically a dad. And when my dad passed away, I started being around this place called the Newport Dory Fleet. Well, I basically got really lucky because my mom and dad had no relatives. So I should have been put in an orphanage. But because this one guy's name was Uncle Louie, I evaded the whole thing. I basically, Uncle Louie took me. I went to Uncle Louie's house, and I got really upset at my dad anyway, he got drunk. I could hear him fall. I took off I just left knowing that I don't know why I knew he was dead. And literally I walked through the room. We had roommates, and I told the roommates, I go, what was that sound? Oh, it's just my dad dead in the bathroom. I mean, I was a bitter, angry little kid, is an understatement. You know what I mean? I literally, no emotions, left, and I went to Uncle Louie's house after walking the beach for a little bit. And I went to Uncle Louie's house, and the police came 3 hours later, knocked on the door. And because everybody told him, oh, he's at Uncle Louie's, the police never took me to foster care. And Uncle Louie allowed me to stay there. And I was already working a little bit for him.
Yeah.
And so I just paid him rent. We divided the rent 3 ways, and I paid him my little portion of rent, and he became like a father to me.
How old was Uncle Louie at that time?
He was about 50, 60 years old.
Okay. I thought he was a younger guy your age. Okay.
Yeah. And so he was, he was older, but funny part was he lived with his mom, just had a weird situation, but he was the best guy in the world. He had one arm, so he was handicapped. So I learned a lot. About, we were all handicapped in a way. We know our handicap, but he didn't, if you tried to help me, what do you think, I'm handicapped? He was very smart, very hardworking, very strong, and he was an amazing person. And through him, I ended up being able to be around the right situation to start my own business. And I built a boat at 14, the fishing boat, finished it at 15, and went and got a commercial fishing license at 15 years old, started my own business, and was very successful. Way back then, I was making anywhere between $500 and $1,000 a day a lot of times.
At 15, which is probably equivalent to about 2,000 plus a day now, if not more.
Oh, easy.
Yeah.
I mean, literally more like $5,000 a day, to be honest.
Yeah.
And the funny part is I decided with Uncle Louie's motivation and honestly, I started going to church and decided I need to make something out of myself. And I dug down deep and tried my best to make it up to school. I was so bad in school. I was in the lowest classes. I've always had learning disabilities. I probably have the alphabet to describe me on my learning abilities, and schools didn't know how to tap into it. I didn't know. I don't think they could even to this day, because only thing that motivated me was what I wanted to do. And then I had to learn. So I didn't only become a fisherman. I didn't just start making $500,000 a day because everybody made $500,000 a day. I had this amazing ability to focus so hard on a task, which probably could tell you the first alphabets of my learning. And I was so good at it that it was unbelievable. I mean, it was just I literally, to this day, I say it was given to me. It was just a complete gift to be able to be a fisherman. Well, I made so much money that I would go to school, and my counselor would ask me, well, what are you doing this weekend? Because I had to have a counselor because I was so bad in school. And I'd tell her, this weekend, I'm going to try to make $1,000 or, whatever. And she thought I was lying. And she started making a thing about bumping into me every week to ask me. And then it came up Christmas vacation, and she was coming, and she goes, what are you gonna do over Christmas vacation? I said, my goal is to bank $10,000. And I think that was the straw that broke the camel's back. And so basically she took that moment to say, what do you think about me visiting at your business? And I said, oh, great. And she goes, well, it'd be the best day. Because I think she was really being sarcastic.
Yeah.
I really didn't know it at the time because I was young and dumb.
Yeah.
I didn't care nothing. I was invincible. I was completely invincible in the respects that you could call me anything you want. I was a very tough kid. I fought my whole life, fist fights, and I had a rough life.
Yeah.
And but not that, everybody's got a story. I mean,
yeah.
And so basically she came down on the beach on Christmas Day of all days. I thought, wow, what a weird day to pick it. And she bumped into me and realized the whole thing was real. And she says, you come back to school. We need to have a talk. And I'm like, okay, and she left. And when I went to school, I checked in with her. She got me in her room, shut the door behind me, and goes, what I'm going to tell you, if you tell anybody, I'm going to tell them you're a little liar. And I'm like, dang, what's going on? She literally said, you need to get out of school immediately. You got your whole life in front of you. You make more than the principal. You need to go do this now. And basically she told me in so many words, you suck at school. You have no hope here. You found your way. You need to go do it. She'd go to jail today.
It's so crazy that you hear so many stories and nowadays you get a child in school, and if he's hyperactive or he's bored because he just has no interest. Exactly. That's what it is. That's what it is, Jay. It's just crazy, our system now. It's just that kid hasn't found their passion. The minute they found their passion, they could zone in, and all of a sudden they become amazing or incredible at something.
I'm telling you, parents come in with kids sometimes and they have all these learning disabilities, and they're like fascinated with the animals. And I just tell the parents, I go, and if they're all negative about it, I just tell them, let me tell you, they could be fascinated about a lot of other things that could end them up somewhere bad. At least this one's not going to end them up with anywhere bad,
Yeah.
And I tell them my story a little bit, because really that teacher was a mastermind in her time today I wouldn't consider it a mastermind. You got people like Gary Vee, he's saying, hey, school's a joke. And you know what? I'm not saying school's a joke. I wish I could have somehow been able to learn more in school. I don't even know if I could, because I'm 7 years old and I spend hours on the internet typing and reading, and I can't read and write word. I can read fair. I can't write worth beans. My grammar sucks. My everything sucks. And you would think just by osmosis of looking at it and reading it. So I think my brain is broken, but the good news is it's broken in a way that makes me brilliant in so many other ways. Yeah. Einstein is right behind you.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks he was a freak, but he could figure things out that it took 100 years for other people to figure out he was right. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I've had a lot of times in my life that's been true. So when she somehow, the funny part was I had no mom, no dad. I had no legal guardian. I had nothing. And I told her, well, you can't get me out of school. I don't want to be the truant officer. And she schemed up. I took me, decades to figure out what she did. She schemed up and she said, well, where do you live? And I go, I live with a guy, Uncle Louie. Well, will he sign you out? And I go, well, yeah, he'll do whatever. I mean, because he's all about business and, success and money, and in a positive way. I mean, he gave away half his money, but it wasn't about money. It was about doing your best.
Yeah.
And he ingrained that into me. He used to always tell me, you talk about people negative. All he used to tell me was, you'll never make it. You're never going to make it. I mean, you're lazy. You're this. I used to get so angry, and I would never say anything to him because I respected him. But deep down inside, it was just like, ugh, and the amazing part about it is I've never had any real money in the bank. And I've always been like, I remember one time he came to me, he goes, aren't you tired of living from miracle to miracle? And I said,
miracle to miracle.
Wow. Trust me, I'm not, it's miracle to miracle. And he told me that. And I remember kind of dazing into the sky for a second, telling him, you make it sound so romantic. Because I mean, to me, how is it bad to live from one amazing, whoa to the next, Yeah. And he passed away of all days on my birthday, on my 2 years ago, year and a half ago. And it was almost a weird thing because he was always into saving money and all this stuff. And literally, like, he passes away, and then all of a sudden I got money falling from everywhere. I'm able to pay, be ahead on my bills and bank accounts, savings accounts. And I just think, I want to say, wish he was here to say, I told you I would make it.
Did you do it through the years? You kept a relationship with him?
Oh, he actually lived in my house. So
he lived in your house after
I moved. Yeah, what's funny was to be honest, I felt a little indebted to him. He was an older man.
Of course, yeah.
And at one point, I owed him like $25,000-$30,000, and from the reptile business suffering,
Yeah.
And then things started getting really good, and I told him, hey, I want to buy a house for my family, and I can do it right now. And I go, like, what do you think about moving in? I'll set you up your own apartment. And I built him his own apartment. In the middle of building his own apartment, he always see me as the guy that spent all my money, Yeah. And I mean, because like a little kid, which I love that part of me, I had no fear. I had no worry. And I've lived most of my life without that fear and worry. I did have a worry in my mind, and that was that my kids would someday end up left with nothing like I ended up. But besides that little secret one that I kept inside of me, I was fearless. And so I would always live from money to money to money by, one, like you say, miracle to miracle. And when we were building this house, and I was trying to make his room just immaculate, big sliders so he can go outside, he gave him our master bedroom, and he's like, you're spending too much money. Just forget I'm in part of this. I don't want to move in. And I got so mad. I told you I was stubborn. I got so mad at him. I told him, you know what? You don't move in. I don't care what you do. I'm going to build it, and it'll sit here empty. Because I had a little bit of money, at that time. Yeah.
Yeah.
You want your money back? No, I'm good. Just forget it. You can pay me when you can pay me. And so when I finished it, I told him, here's the deal. I want you to move in. You've been paying X amount for rent, which was like, he lived at this place, cost nothing. I said, just to make me feel good, because when he saw it, he realized that my mind had created this incredible masterpiece, its own little house, and it was just too good to be true. And I said, just consider it rent free forever. And I go, and so I always kept track in my mind, like X amount of years in, I said, hey, guess what? Because he always kept track of money. I'm like, guess what? This month,
my debt is paid off.
I don't owe you nothing.
I love it.
He used to always tell me, "Oh, no man, nothing," which is a scripture out of the Bible.
Yeah.
And so he was the greatest guy in the world. I mean, but he's like every other human. Man, he'd make me so frustrated with telling me I couldn't do it, or wouldn't do it, or shouldn't do it, or I should be doing this, or I should be doing that. And I didn't, but I had a drive inside of me that was had a form and an idea. And I kept on that vision and
I love it. I love it. When did the reptile, I won't even call it farm, zoo, when did that start? When did that start?
Yeah. So basically at about, I'll tell you exactly. So I got married. Yeah. And when I got married, I came to this harsh realization. Though I was a commercial fisherman, I woke up at midnight or 2:00 in the morning to go do that. And I was like, the last thing you want to do is crawl out of bed from your hot wife that you just married to go to work at midnight or 2:00 in the morning. And that would just mentally was too much for me, because not to mention, you can only imagine from not having any real family. My wife was pretty important to me, and my kids were really important to me.
Yeah.
That developed into the point where in a very short time, I said to myself, I don't want to be a fisherman no more.
What was that period from the time you got married? What age were you? What age were you? 20. You got married young, so 23. When did you have your first daughter?
24.
Oh, so it was like boom, boom.
Yeah, I got married, and then we waited 3 months. Yeah. And then, I say waited, but the rule is like, I didn't care. I was like, hey, we're going to have kids. Let's have kids.
Yeah.
And my wife wanted kids. She was she was 1 year younger than me. And she was like, I got married to have a family. So what does it matter? You know what I mean? Yeah. So we just vicariously figured when it happens, it happens. And of course,
you're never prepared. You're never prepared. It is what it is. That's prepared, right?
Well, I'd learned that my whole life, I'd learned that I watched everybody say, when I have this, I'm going to get married. When I have this, I'm going to buy a house. When I have this, and I watched them all fail. Yeah. And so I thought, well, you know what? If I always like
opportunist.
And you know what's funny is the world has made that such a negative term that I'm an opportunist. Yeah. Because they think of it as prey, like you're gonna take advantage of something. I try to take advantage of the moments and the opportunities that are given me. Yeah. So when I'm told from somebody in Saudi Arabia, hey, come over and visit me, all you do is buy the tickets and show up, and the rest is mine. I get on a plane and I go. I just, same thing, Dubai. Hey, just show up. We got everything. I didn't have any money at either time, but I just said to myself, you know what? The door's open.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be scared. I'm going to make it happen. And being self-employed is giving me some flexibility. Obviously.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Being an entrepreneur.
So I try really hard to double down on given opportunities. I've lost plenty of them out of worry, fear. I can't do that. I'm going to be gone too long, but I try to do whatever I can to prevent that from happening. So basically when we decided to have kids and everything, and after we got married, I just told my wife, you know what? I don't want my kids to be raised around drugs and alcohol. And fishermen, man, they take a lot of drugs and a lot of alcohol. That's a generalization, but in my world, it was 80% fact.
That high, huh? Of a number.
Oh, I can't count the dead friends on my hands.
Wow.
I cannot. No way I could count all my dead friends from drugs and alcohol. Me,
Is it because of the boredom of being sometimes out there for so many hours? Like what do you think of the cause?
They never drink out in the boats usually.
No, huh?
I think honestly, it's the extra money.
Yeah.
You know, and the weird life and the weird hours and honestly, at that era of life, alcoholism was really bad. I'm not suggesting that there ain't no drug and alcohol problems now, but like back then it was a higher ratio.
Yeah.
It was kind of, you know, in the 70s, early 80s, and just a lot of people, you know, now shoot, marijuana is legal. You know what I mean? And marijuana is fine for some people, but can lead you in a bad direction when
100%.
Illegal. It's an illegal drug and you're breaking the law. Well, what's the difference between the next illegal drug and the next illegal drug? And they're trying everything, and before you know it, they're addicted to I mean, I had multiple friends addicted to pills and heroin, and they're all around me. And I was telling somebody the other day, the most amazing part about it was, here I was, this little kid, and I wouldn't take drugs. I was like, they would always offer me drugs and alcohol and marijuana. And I'd literally, as a little kid, I was so mentally stubborn, strong, whatever you want to call it, ignorant. I'd look at these adults and tell them, what do you think? I'm stupid. I don't want to end up like you.
Which is so amazing.
They all love me. They took me in. They would do anything. They would try to do anything because they felt like, man, this kid's telling us the way it is. And it was,
it's so crazy. Anyway, you're laughing, but it's so special when you think about it now, right?
No, I mean, everybody else just follows the crowd right off the cliff. You know what I mean? And so somehow even though I look back and I always say was given the worst life, but I was given this little slither of determination, stubbornness, strength, and faith that made me able to see past everything, which was so, I was so stubborn, you could pull my fingernails out just to try to get me to do one thing. And I'd say, no, I don't want to do it. You know what I mean? I'm obviously exaggerating, but barely. You know what I mean? I'd be willing to go to blows. I didn't care if I got beat up. I mean, it just didn't matter. I mean, and so that determination, that same determination and belief that I could do it. I told my wife, hey, I want to do something else for a living, even though, I wanted money as bad as everybody else, because back then I thought money was still real important. I don't think as much now, really, because I think it's really, life is more important than
100%
people year round. But there was a little pet store I used to buy that got me back into reptiles, by the way. So imagine being now used to catch them out in the field. Now I'm 20 years old, 18 years old, making $500,000 a day. I made 10,000 one day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Way back then, it's like making $100,000 a day. And so now I went out and I went to the store and I bought $2,000 snakes, You know what I mean? Now all of a sudden I had these cool animals, and the place I used to go to, they were selling it. And I just told my wife, what do you think? And she's like, yeah, they got cats and dogs and all this cool stuff. And I'm like, well, let's just switch businesses. Wow. I couldn't imagine if my daughter or my son said that to me now. I'd be like, I don't have a son, but my point is that would I just go into shock. Like, you're making how much and you're going to do what? And so we bought this little pet store, and it was a struggle. Yeah. And eventually my wife is like, look, dog had parvo, all kinds of problems. She's like, I'm done with it. I'm done. I don't want no more dogs and cats. You do reptile thing. And that's how here we are.
So it was originally a pet shop then?
Oh, 100% normal pet store. We still actually have a little slither of a pet store next to our zoo.
How many square feet is your zoo? How many animals or how many reptiles do you have?
So we really have a small place as a zoo goes. I mean, zoos are usually, they're parking lots.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Places look like nothing, Yeah.
So
I have it's about my place with the little pet shop part of it, which is a very small portion, is like 13,000 square feet.
Yeah, that's good size, controllable, which is nice.
Yeah. I mean, it's still dreaming of a big place, but not positive that's where I'm going to go because of social media and all the digital world and, metaverses.
That has changed everything altogether. Metaverse. Yes, that's I didn't expect to hear that from you, but
that wouldn't have actually changed my mind.
Yeah.
I would still want to build a big zoo. I wanted to build small zoos all over the United States. And I don't know if I'm going to do that or not. My wife's
kind of like a franchise.
Yeah, not really a franchise. Yes and no. I would open them and sell them, open them and sell them.
Yeah.
They'd be a simple, detailed out thing with my brand. And that was what I thought for sure I was going to do. Then COVID hit.
Yeah.
And that's been adjusting me. Before that, I had my Uncle Louie had gotten sick and I had to full-time take care of him for a year before that. And I wasn't, everybody's like, put him in a rest home. And I'm like,
no,
you know what? I will die. I literally told, I hate to say it, but I told my wife, hey, I love you. If you can't handle it, I'll rent you a place. I get it. Or we'll go rent a place. And I got to see this through. And I said, and it was a brutal time.
Yeah.
It was a brutal year, but then hit COVID because otherwise I would already be started before COVID.
Yeah.
Thank God I didn't open up. I would have lost everything because there's just no way I could have. So even my zoo being closed for 12 months would have been completely impossible financially. But with having the ability to social media, I stepped in. So I was already in social media for a long time and I had lots of content because I just right before COVID, I traveled all over the world and did all kinds of crazy stuff and got a lot of really good content. So when COVID hit, I doubled down on social.
So you're with all the content you were building, you were planning it already? Was this kind of like your long-term game?
Or, yeah. Always was. I mean,
yeah.
I've been doing social media. Dang, I mean, I didn't get at Instagram early, but at YouTube I got in early, but I've never done great in YouTube. I mean, I say that and I got 175 billion views, but compared to what I should have been able to do, YouTube doesn't like me. But I don't care. At the end of the day, I've always told myself, do what you love, don't do what you need to do. And that's always been something that's driven me. And so I wanted to have a voice. I wanted to share my passion. And COVID kind of got me in hyperplay. I mean, I'd already had multi-millions in Instagram and all that, but I can actually say I brought my daughter in during COVID because I could see all of a sudden we were making this money. So I started, hey, I got an idea, Instagram, Facebook was like, excuse me, Facebook manager. I had a manager and then he's like, well, we can't see a big enough separation between the Reptile Zoo's content and your personal Facebook content. And I said, I got a plan. I got an idea. And I told my daughter, hey, I want you to be the face of the Reptile Zoo. And so they're like, okay, well, that would help, because they were just trying to get it to be two separate entities.
Yeah.
So basically I got invited to Snapchat and I was like pretty excited. So like 3 weeks or so and a month into it, I thought, man, I need to do the same thing I did with Facebook.
Yeah.
We're already recording. She's already doing great. She's kicking it on Instagram, taking over the Reptile Zoo. She's kicking it on TikTok. She's kicking on everything. She's awesome. Her name's Juliet. I have two daughters that are pretty involved, but one of them got married during COVID and moved away. And so she's just very limited part-time working here.
Yeah.
And
how old are your daughters?
I have one daughter that's 31, one daughter that's 30, and one that's 27.
Yeah. I love that. I love that you're involved with your daughter. If you even see my posts, I mean, I got two kids. My kids are turning 14 and 16. And my daughter, I run a whole bunch of companies. I've been an entrepreneur for 26 years. One of my main companies is called Comor, where we design and manufacture boxing martial art equipment. Been doing that for 16 years. And then we have a whole a portfolio of rentals, vacation, commercial. And we're building out a beach house right now. And my daughter has been helping with rentals and she's 15 turning 16. And this kid's like, She's shocking me. She's like hammering things, putting floors. And I'm like, this is like, I'm recording this all. We're actually recording this whole reno to do a YouTube show. And in my head, I'm like, I'm like, this is like HGTV. I got a father and daughter show. Like I got to get all over this thing. So it's funny.
I mean, that's, it's funny is we've almost had multiple shows.
Yeah.
And so the shit, anyway, Snapchat ended up taking her on, even though it's invitation only, they thought, wow, that's, and they invited her in. And so both of our shows have done well. And by the time COVID got under control, we're up to, I think within a few days, we're going to be at 50 million followers between the two of us, between our social media circle. You know what I mean?
This is incredible.
Mind blowing. If you'd have told me any time that I would be 10 million on any platform, I would have, even as much as I was a dreamer, I always say living the dream, because it's literally something that if you pursue your dream, you just somehow end up in a place where you could never even dream. Yeah. And that's literally what I mean by living the dream. It's like, I'm like standing there in real life going, 50 million?
Yes, crazy. Yeah, it's crazy.
I mean, no, it's mind boggling. It's
But I mean, it's your vision, your hard work. I mean, there's a lot of, no one's an overnight success. You've been at this for a long time.
Everybody thinks it is.
Yeah, it's never, buddy. I've been at this 26 years, buddy. There's no overnight success, And I've done all, like I wrote a book, which is #1 seller called Entrepreneurial Dad. Like I've done all kinds of stuff, but everybody just sees what's happening at the moment. They don't realize the years and years of just the ups and downs and the wins and losses. And at the end of the day, you're just hoping you have more wins than losses stacked up. That's all it is.
I used to always tell everybody, you know what a good investment is? One that you break even. Because you can recover from a break even. When you have when you make an effort and you lose a ton of money, it takes you forever to get back to just ground zero.
Yeah.
It's funny because I actually have a book that I'm going to try to get out in the next 12 months.
Good.
It's all written. So maybe I'll have to send you over a copy and tell me what I need to do to be a success.
Anytime, buddy. Anytime. I mean,
you can imagine.
And you know what? With your following now, have you tried to bring it out to a publishing house?
No.
I mean, you're following right now. A publishing house would take it up in a second.
Yep.
Yeah, so it's something we could talk off air because I have some connections I could probably introduce you.
I honestly have been slow at doing it because I just feel like I always say I'm an opportunist.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I can see some things forming, especially now. We're working on a show, maybe going to have a show on a network and, and all kinds of different things. And I can see this just to be able to say 50 million followers, what I mean? Which is, like I said, it's just like all these things are coming together.
And once you get on TV, it just changes. I had one of my guests on. I don't know if you know who Richard Rawlings is, Gas Monkey Garage.
Oh yeah.
Fast and Loud. So we had Richard on and we had such a great conversation. We've talked a few times after. And this guy was like, same thing, working, trying everything. He was on the Chip Few show. He was just trying to get on. And finally, they took him on for 6 episodes as a trailer, and it exploded. Ended up being in 9-10 years, and back then it was different. Now he says he would never go back on TV because they control everything, like licensing and all that. But back then, Gas Monkeys, tequila, his energy drink, he was putting his brand on everything, and he's exploded. Like now he's off TV, and he said he's making more on his YouTube than he did financially on the TV show. So it's the power of TV is so crazy.
That's still true.
Yeah.
So,
But the power of TV, just getting your face in front of the different is incredible, the strength of that.
Yeah. And that's what I see. I see it as like, I always built the zoo on the idea that if I was to get a show, that they would have a place to come meet me. They'd have a place to come have the little bit of experience. I'm just one guy that built a little zoo. That's my dream that I've always wanted to do. And to be able to share it with the amount of people without getting a TV show was almost like a slap in the face, because I always felt like I got to get a TV show. And really, I made it without a TV show.
Yeah.
Everything's great. And now a TV show, you know, I think that, you know, I look at it like, wow, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's not even important anymore.
No, it would be a bonus.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, and the good part is because I played it all out first, I have control over more than I would have ever had, because when I before I almost signed TV deals, they'd use words like from infinity and like, you know, like what the heck in the universe? You know what I mean? Like, whoa, they're like trying to take over.
Once you're locked down, they try to take all. And then now I've had Carol Basket from Tire King. I've had a whole bunch of reality stars on our show. And when you talk to them, I even had one from a Jersey Delicious, this show in New Jersey, a hair cutting show. And what they say is, it's now they try to lock you down, where it's like, if you even come up with a new product, they have to have 50% of any future products that you come out with because of your fame on the show. Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. Okay, there's a whole bunch of things I want to get to. So one, reptiles. How close have you, or what was the worst injury you've had around one?
I got bit by a rattlesnake, almost died.
How long ago was this? When was this? And where was this?
I was 20. I was 23 years old, just before I got married. And I might've been 22. And I was 22 because in September I turned 23. So I was 22 years old, got bit by a rattlesnake just out playing with snakes in general.
Yeah.
And I lifted up a big, heavy piece of metal with a buddy. And it was so heavy, the two of us could barely lift it up. And I realized it had these metal ribs in it. It was a piece of iron.
Yeah.
There was 5 rattlesnakes underneath it.
Wow.
And I could have dropped it and killed 3 or 4 of them because those ribs would have just smushed them. But no, I didn't want to hurt the rattlesnake. So I held it there. He took off and I held it there, balancing it on the neutral, thing instead of dropping it. And one of them coiled up at my foot. And I thought, shit. And the other ones had cleared. So I pushed the metal back and that one just stood up to strike at me, and I blocked it with my foot once. And then I thought, I better pin it down with my foot. And I had a pair of Van tennis shoes way back in the day. And they were they slip-ons, low side. And he stuck one fang right in the side of my foot and just pumped everything it had in me. And I was so ignorant. That 5-year-old in me came out and said, "Hey, I got bit. I better go home and better drive me home just in case I get feeling sick." I watched Old Yeller and he did fine in my mind,
Yeah.
I'm just gonna go sit by the fireplace. I mean, it's just a joke, kind of.
Yeah.
I literally thought, I'll just go home. I'll be fine. No big deal. I'm invincible. I take a boat that I built, in my friend's backyard, and I take it out 50 miles and almost died 1 million times. I'm invincible. No big deal. And we start driving home, and I'm like, all of a sudden I'd sucked in my foot, which tells you I was a little thinner than I was today. And I'd spit out the venom on the ground and, kept doing that. And when we got in the car, my lips started tingling. And I thought at the time, I messed up. I should have never put that in my mouth. But what it was is the venom was affecting my whole neurological system.
Yeah.
And we drove down the road, and I said, drive by a hospital just in case. And I couldn't move. All of a sudden my face started getting tight and I couldn't move. And I thought, this is getting serious. And we saw a big construction site, and didn't have a cell phone with us for some reason. I don't know why. And I told my friend, pull over and call 911. And I might've had a cell phone, but back then it was like, where are you going to meet us?
Yeah.
And anyway, they basically took me in, and I almost died. It was horrible. It was not a good situation. That's a podcast all of its own.
How long were you in the hospital for after that?
7 days intensive care.
Wow.
The paper said clinging to life.
Wow.
And,
wow.
My leg got so big that they had to make 7 incisions they were measuring it every hour all night long for the first 2 days. just kept measuring it
For the
because
swelling?
it was so big, they thought it was going to rip open. And so they were trying to decide where they needed to make 7 incisions, the length of my leg, to prevent it
For the
from popping.
fluids. Wow.
Well, they don't want it to blow up
Yeah.
like a broken watermelon or something. You know what I mean? You ever seen people thump the watermelon?
Yeah.
Well, my leg was right there.
Wow.
And my heart was all messed up. And
How long did it take you to recover, even once you got back? Like, how?
Well, the fun part was when I checked out, they handed me this little piece of paper that was on every vial.
Yeah.
And it said I had a X and Y chance of being a paraplegic, an X and Y chance of being a quadriplegic.
Yeah.
And then they proceeded to read the symptoms. If you have what they call SERM sickness, was itchiness. And then it was going to be like 14 days or 20 days. I can't remember. I have to Google it, but it was a certain amount of time because they made it out of horse serum.
Yeah.
They jet horses and you get this anyway. You had this chance of basically being a quadriplegic or paraplegic. And the number one symptom that it said I would have is itching.
Yeah.
Well, when your leg swells up to the point of ripping and then shrinks back down and all the skin falls off of it, I'll tell you a little secret.
You're
all
itchy.
you do is itch. So that was a very tough time in my.
Wow.
That was a very tough time. They told me in the hospital that I was going to lose my foot at minimum. And a bunch of my friends from church prayed for me, and I didn't lose anything. I didn't even lose a piece of skin besides just shedding. You know what I mean? I didn't.
Very, very lucky.
No, I was more than lucky. It was a miracle.
As a dad,
Uncle Louie's miracle surviving from miracle. That was just one of many. That one we wouldn't even qualify as a miracle.
Is Uncle Louie in your book?
Of course.
I love it. As a father, your daughters are now in your field. Does this scare you? Do you have moments of like, God, if something happens to them, like, do you ever think about that?
I guess you could say I still buffer them a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, my Juliet, the one that does taking over all the pages, she's got some pretty hefty scars.
Yeah. Huh?
She was a lot like me. She's
fearless,
scared of nothing. Yeah. Strong as can be, mentally. Really, honestly, I'm proud to say I have 3 very strong women in my life. I have 4, count my wife, and it isn't by accident; it's by choice. In the respects that I don't like, I guess I'm okay with a little pushback,
Yeah. What does fatherhood mean to you?
For me, I mean, literally it meant more than to maybe most people, because when my daughter was born, my first daughter, Laura, I named her First Blood because
that's her name?
Nickname,
First Blood. I love it.
Because she was my first living relative. I mean, you marry your wife, she's not my relative, right?
Yeah.
I mean, my wife's not my relative. She's my wife. You know what I mean? So to me, it was really important to me to have kids because I wanted to have relatives. And back to the next podcast, I met my whole family. Now I have so many family members I could never even begin to tell.
I was going to ask you, now that with your popularity, did family members come out of the blue, like found you?
Absolutely not. I went and looked for them when I was 34 years old. And I'd looked for them. I'd always wanted to meet my mom, never wanted to meet my dad.
Yeah.
And I just thought, well, my dad must be a piece of crap because my dad wanted to meet me. Then, if my dad wanted to be my dad, then who cares if what my mom wanted, he would have kept me.
Yeah.
And so I just thought he just kind of was spineless. He just never really wanted to meet my dad. So when I met my mom, I just kind of, thought, wow, this is pretty cool. And I wanted to meet my mom just because I thought, what if she, has it horrible? What if I have a sister that has it horrible? Yeah. I want to be there for them. And so when I met my mom, she told me, oh, your dad was a great guy, and just kind of crumbled me a little bit.
Wow.
When I went to go meet my dad, I had a tough time, and he was really wealthy, and he kind of held me back. I kind of got held back time-wise because of he was long. It's literally a book. I mean,
Yeah.
it's the whole thing, back to the miracle thing. I mean, it just, when I met my mom, her first words were, I had a hard time finding my mom. It's incredible story. I mean, I literally had looked for a year with having her information. I knew who she was. I knew she was born. I knew her social security number. I knew everything about my mom, and I could not find her for a minimum of 6 to 8 months. I didn't keep track. I didn't sit down every day, right? Wow, looking for this many days. And a guy walked in my shop, and he did back then. This was when the internet wasn't really hardly the internet.
Yeah.
It was code, I mean, you could just,
Yeah.
well, they didn't even know what a firewall was back then. You could go into the government records and everything.
Yeah.
This is crazy, right?
Yeah. I remember that. Yeah.
And so basically I asked him, hey, will you help me find my mom? And he railed on me. No, I'll never help anybody. If your mom wants to find you, she'll find you. And I told him, hey, I'm sorry, man. I just asking, and he walked away, came back in. He goes, you're probably the nicest guy I ever met. Will you promise me that you won't bug her? And I go, hey man, I'm 33 years old. I don't even need a mom. I don't need a dad. I want to know my mom. I'd like to know my dad. At that time I didn't want to know my dad. I'd like to know my brothers and sisters. And he said, as long as you promise not to, if she wants no part of you, walk away. I go, you got my word. He went home and he calls me back and says, you're not going to believe this. And I go, what? He goes, if you would have asked me yesterday, I couldn't have found her. Because you asked me today, she filled out something last night, and here's your current address.
Wow.
No, that we'll talk about Uncle Louie and his miracle to miracle comment, right?
Wow.
So I tell my wife, I'm going to go see my mom. She says, I'm not going. Uncle Louie tells me don't go. Everybody's telling me don't.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that does to me, but apparently that just, I already had a
You're
plan.
gone. Yeah.
And nobody mattered. They didn't motivate me to go anymore. It was just like, hey, I'm just, this is a formality, and I literally wake up, I go to bed, and my wife says, oh, I decided to go with you. So we drive 5 hours. We get there. I bring my kids, 2 at this point, and I tell my wife, hey, do you mind going and knocking on the door? Because there won't be no offensiveness with a woman and a couple kid in an arm, and you know what I mean? So she goes, sure. And it just started snowing 15 minutes before Sunday morning of all days.
Yeah.
She knocks on the door. She goes in, and then the longest 5 minutes of my life goes by. I'm like, what the heck? Why aren't they coming and getting me? So I get up, I get out of the car, I go knock on the door. They let me in. They're in kind of a foyer area. And the lady looks at me and goes, oh, your mom's coming 1 second, or didn't call her mom. Says, Catherine will be here in 1 second.
Yeah. And
she comes walking out. She's half asleep and she's looking like this. And this young man seems to think you're my son. You're his son. And my mom says, well, of course he's my son. And I'm just like, what is going on here? Wow. I've walked into a psycho's house. Yeah. I'm the only one that knows who's who. Yeah. But I don't say that, but I just politely go, they keep talking back and forth like we're not even there. Like, well, you remember. And I go, not to be rude, but how would you know you're my, I started asking questions. Like, when was I born? And she goes, it was right around Labor Day. My birthday is September 5th. Well, guess what? September 5th lands on Labor Day all the time. I mean, it's that weekend.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and I keep looking at her, and I think she looks familiar to top it all off. And she says, I said, so how do you know I'm your son? And she goes, well, a few months ago, I wanted to go out and find you. And a lady came to me and told me randomly, don't go looking for your son, that he's going to come to your doorstep. The lady at church told him that.
Yeah.
Told her this. And apparently the 2 women were there at the same time when this woman told them. And so she had told her friend, hey, so-and-so told me don't go look for her son. He'll end up on my doorstep. And so my first, which I'm a full-blown, been in so many miracles in my life. I just doesn't shock me.
Yeah.
I don't know why that one shocked me, but I was just like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
And the story
it's incredible, right?
No, it gets crazier. I tell her that I was at Newport Dory Fleet, and she goes, "Oh, I used to be around there." And my mind goes into this memory. Did you drive a Mercedes? She goes, "Yeah, I drove a Mercedes and I did real estate." And I go, "Did you used to feed homeless people?" And she goes, "Yeah." And I go, "No way." And I go, "You fed me one time." The wind was blowing like crazy. No homeless people present. And she had these like 10 burritos, and she walked up to me. There was almost nobody there because it was so windy and so cold. And she said, "Hey, I thought maybe some of the fishermen would like to eat these. I brought them from the home for homeless people, but I hate to see them go to waste. Would you like to take these burritos and give them to any of the other fishermen or anybody you want?" And I said, "Sure." And I ate the burrito. That was like, 2 decades earlier.
So crazy.
I mean, just crazy stuff.
Is she still present with us?
I have a mom and I have a dad. My dad's 83. I don't know how old my mom is. I think she said she's 41. And that's like an ongoing joke. I'm older than she is somehow. But anyway, they were never together. It's a long, story.
Yeah.
Amazing story. But the whole thing was, even my dad was mind boggling. I mean, just the way when I met my dad, it was just like every minute of to be honest, I'm living the dream. And I mean, I don't understand half. I'm looking right here and look who's calling me, David Blaine. I mean, I'm living the dream. It's just like, I don't even know how to describe it, except that I'm willing to believe that I'm going to leave it here. It's not necessarily my normal way of doing it, because I'm like I just going to leave it here. Seriously.
Yeah.
I believe this world is programmed by somebody, which I believe is God, and it's made for us to do our best.
Yeah.
And if we're willing to put our best foot forward and believe hard enough to take some risk, that somehow it'll all work out for your good. And we're all going to die. I get it.
Yeah.
But we don't even understand that that's even worked out. And my life has been one miracle after another. I still have hard times. I mean, when COVID hit, I almost lost everything.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I try to do the right thing. I try to be good to people. I try to be good to whoever I can be. I fail at it all the time, but I get up the next day and I try to do it right again. And I try to keep a good attitude. And I love it. I
love it. This is awesome. This has been incredible. One quick question. That fish behind you, is that an Oscar?
It's funny. We're just prepping it to grow up. It's an Oscar.
I grew up. My dad was obsessed with Oscars, and we had fish tanks all over the house full of Oscars. He would breed them. He loved Oscars. And the whole time I've been staring at it. So it just brought memories of it as a little kid.
I didn't even know if you could see it. I purposely tried to grab this position.
Yeah. I can see it. I can see it floating behind you. And in my head, I was like, it just bringing back memories as a kid, always seeing the tanks with fish tanks full of Oscars in our house. So I love that. That was pretty cool seeing that.
Yeah. And so basically that Oscar's in there to prepare the water, because I want to grow up peacock bass, which I like. Peacock bass. They get really big. They're colorful. They're pretty awesome. So part of getting to do what I get to do is I get to do almost anything I want to do, except I do have to work hard. I mean, nothing comes easy.
You're an entrepreneur. I mean, and that's and people like you are needed. I myself, like where I started from 19. I've never worked for nobody. I'm 45, and
I never worked for anybody.
Yeah, it's a special thing, right?
I barely did at a pet store one time, but it was really because I wanted to work at a pet store.
Yeah. So it's the dreamers, the ones that go out there and do the stuff and just lead the way. And there's a need for us, right? And there's a need for what you're doing. And I think you're the tip right now. I mean, there's so much more is going to come with what you're doing. And I love watching what you're doing, and you're sincere, you're genuine. You could hear it from your voice. You can hear it. So I love it, buddy.
Too old. I always thought I was too old and it was too late.
You're never.
And I want to tell everybody, I'm proof that it's never too old. You're never too old and it's never too late.
Never.
If it's in here, it'll get done.
I love it.
Don't you agree?
100,000%.
What you're saying is I want to reiterate, you're 100% right. 100, and I believe it with my whole heart, and I believe that's true with the person sitting back that's watching that thinks that all they have is bad luck.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a victim mentality, right? And I think a lot of people feel a lot of people fall in that right now, and especially I think social media kind of rewards that in a way, right?
Yep.
So it's you just can't. You feeling sorry for yourself is not going to get you nowhere in life.
I've lived in that zone. I've lived out of that zone. I've lived fighting to get out of that zone at times, and I'm just so glad that I can look back and say every rock in my life was the building pieces to make a bridge to an island that I never thought I could get to. And I'm just taking my rocks with me for the next.
And I'm going to say one last thing is the thing I appreciate probably the most you're doing as a dad, as somebody that coaches dads, somebody that has a passion for that. I love that you brought your daughters into the business. I love that you're continuing this on. And I think that's a real special thing, because the memories you're building with your kids, I mean, they're going to last a lifetime and generation after generation after generation, right?
I literally was simple-minded in that way. I had none of those memories to speak of. I had no family. Yeah. And so for me, it was really a simple decision. And I thought my wife with me the whole time. I mean, she's not working now. Yeah. And I trying to drag her back in a way, but not really to work, but just to be next to me, doing more things. And I just think that there's nothing like those memories, and I don't think there'll ever be anything like those memories. I mean, it's just incredible, and I hope to make a lot more of them before I go bye from this place we call Earth.
I know.
Yeah.
Where can our audience find you, follow you?
Everything is J Prehistoric Pets.
J Prehistoric Pets. Love it. This has been awesome.
My daughter is the Reptile Zoo.
Reptile Zoo. I love it. I love it. I would love to get her on the podcast.
You know what? She's awesome. You'd love her. The funny thing is I go places. I always kid around with her and I go, Jay who? That's what they're going to be saying in no time at all. And like I went to this, I went to the party, big party, all these famous people, and they walk up, and they're, they're epitome above me, I mean, they're like, oh, I love you. And I love your daughter, and I can't even explain to anybody how much that's kind of like incredible to have that, and then have it from the most common person to the highest person to the toughest person to it's just so nice to be able to realize that as humanity, people, this earth is about people. Yeah. And the more we get to share ourselves with each other, the better life can be.
I love it. We're going to end it off with that. Thank you so much, Jay. You've been awesome, brother.
Have a wonderful day. And I'm glad
it worked out. That's a wrap for today. I want to thank our guest, Jay, for taking time as an incredibly busy schedule to be a guest on the Jeff Knows Inc. podcast. Such a great conversation. I hope you guys enjoyed as much as I have. If you have, just like always, tell your friends, tell your family, spread the word. Leave a review. 5 stars would be absolutely amazing. Myself, my team love spending time reading reviews. Until next week, guys, keep moving forward.